I think I, like many others, have not really expected that much from Pragmata after it was first revealed a few years ago. It also didn't really help that aside from the sci-fi setting, pretty visuals and several delayed release dates, there wasn't much presented about Pragmata. And even after playing the demo and really liking the gameplay, I still waited some time to play the game itself. But now that I'm 3 achievements away from the Platinum Trophy, I can tell you that for me, while not being perfect, no game is, Pragmata scratches an itch I didn't know I had, especially gameplay-wise. But first things first. Presentation-wise, the game does a really good job. I'm a huge fan of the character models for you and Diana, but also for the opponents, especially the bosses. The boss designs have something horrific to them, something gigantic, uncanny and brutal, without being disgusting, which I really learned to like during my playthrough. The surroundings, on the other hand, can seem a bit bland and repetitive, especially inside the wide rooms and hallways of the research facility. But Capcom utilizes the sci-fi research lab setting perfectly to create a versatile set of beautiful sceneries, like an artificial version of New York, a beach, or the moon's surface itself, just to name a few. Underlined is all of this with a soundtrack by video game music veteran Yasumasa Kitagawa, who is working in the scene since 1997 for Konami and later Capcom. Now for the heart of every good action adventure, the gameplay. In Pragmata, this means exploring your surroundings and fighting evil robots. But all of your missions begin inside the main hub of the game, called the Shelter, that you gain access to right after the introduction sequence of the game. Before even going to missions in the several sectors, you have a variety of options to spend your time. You can read through data logs or research documents found throughout the campaign. You may speak with, give presents to, or play with Diana, which will sometimes result in the game presenting us the only AI art I can get behind.
I drew it! It's for you!
Look at that. You wrote your name, too. Not half bad, kiddo.
With the introduction of Cabin, the shelter's robotic caretaker, we also get the option to take part in 30 different challenges and exchange so-called cabin coins for all sorts of rewards. The most important aspect of your shelter activities are upgrading and changing your gear, your suit and Diana's hacking abilities. Your gear consists of 4 types of weapons: your main weapon, high damage offensive weapons like a chargeable railgun, defensive tools like a decoy that distracts opponents for a certain amount of time, or tools that weaken your foes like the stasis net that locks the affected enemies in place for a while. For hacking equipment, you can choose between so-called hacking nodes that strengthen Diana's hacks for a limited time of uses. You can also change the hacking mode that permanently changes your hacking effects, like making opponents overheat faster. On top of that, there are the so-called mods that can range from damage boosts up to new abilities like refilling your main ammo after successfully hacking. So, after all your equipment is adjusted to your liking, you actually get to engage in the combat itself. Here, you will encounter a variety of opponents that all have a unique style of attacking and defending themselves, but overall it will always break down to having to hack each opponent to reveal their weak points and make them vulnerable to your attacks. Some later on might have a shield that will slow down your progress, but in the end doesn't change the concept. And I think in combination with the unique movesets for each opponent, even for stronger versions of them, that hacking combat gimmick is enough for a new IP and the game's length. On the other hand, what I was missing was destruction. It sometimes felt a little weird when you supercharge a railgun and there's no visual feedback for the damage you cause. But that's just me, so feel free to tell me what you think in the comments. Now before we come to the story section, I want to give you the chance to skip to the timestamp shown on the screen right now. The game begins with our protagonist Yu arriving on the moon as part of a crew of mechanics because Earth lost contact with the moon base. The 4 men immediately grow suspicious as there is no human worker inside. They begin to make their way through the corridors anyway with the help of a freshly printed android called a Walker. They continue looking for the issue until an earthquake causes the structure they are inside at the moment to collapse and Yu to drop down and get separated from his group. We then bear witness to a young girl in a blue coat repairing the still unconscious Yu's suit with the help of a first aid device. When he comes to his senses, Yu quickly notices who saved him, thanks his savior and asks for her name, while being worried about a child being alone on the space station. His worries are replaced by confusion as the girl introduces herself as DI-03367, state-of-the-art so-called Pragmata. Yu, who isn't too fond of the idea to call her by her serial number, quickly decides to call his new companion Diana, which he very obviously likes. To regain the ability to contact Earth, they need to reactivate the power supply first, so the two begin to make their way there. But because just walking over and pressing a button would be way too easy, after dealing with a few robots, we end up in front of a closed door. So we are back to exploring the facility, and after finding several logs scattered around the surroundings for Diana to hack, we reach the console for energy control. Here, Eidos, the AI that went mad and took over control of the moonbase, decides it's time to introduce himself with the help of a huge mech trying to stop us from reaching our goal. After overcoming our very first actual boss fight of the game, we get to reactivate the power supply, and our next goal is the communications tower. But first we get introduced to the shelter. We will fill our supplies and make our way towards our target that is in the middle of a replica version of New York. When we try to approach the tower, Eidos isn't a fan of that idea and closes a giant gate that is locked with 6 individual locks. So we make our way through the surrounding facilities until we activated 6 individual hacking points. Along the way we also gain the ability to destroy the blue crystals that are a product of errors that occur while structures are printed. Anyway, with the last lock out of the way, the massive gate opens, revealing the comms tower. Hugh and Diana make their way through the gate, hoping to finally get closer to contacting Earth. But Eidos has other plans, as he introduces us to another of his mechanical beasts, the so-called Creator, a massive crawling, robotic abomination that would try to crush us with his hands or burn us with a constant set of laser beams coming from its hammer-shaped head. After taking many blows to its weak points, the Creator eventually hits the ground and opens the way to our goal. Inside, we are forced to accept the fact that our plan was too easy to not be intercepted by our AI antagonist, as the communications are blocked entirely. In their disappointment, the two are contacted by a girl's voice with a hologram of a cat that claims to be trapped in the so-called Terror Dome and asks for our help. He is a bit hesitant to drop their plans to help, but is quickly convinced by how important helping the girl, who calls herself 8, seems to Diana. At the Terror Dome, we witness for the first time that on the moon they also experimented with printing and manipulating living organisms. One of those experiments, a giant tree in the center of the dome, is out of control, so we have to find and reactivate regulators to regain control and reach 8. We do so, the tree partly dissolves and we get access to the room where 8 is supposed to be trapped. Inside we find out that 8, like Diana, is a Pragmata. While still being trapped inside some tree branches behind a glass wall, the robot girl informs us that Pragmata should have the ability to override and regain control over Eidos. Diana searches her memory but sadly can't find that function herself, and on top of that we can't seem to find a way to get 8 out of her misery and have her aid us. The last thing that might help is finding another regulator much deeper in the facility, so now that they already came this far, Diana and you go there next without hesitation. During their journey through the depths of the Terror Dome, we get to witness one of the nicest scenes of the game, as the two come across an artificial beach where Yu promises the amazed Diana that he will take her to see the real ocean down on Earth. Now at the end of our Terror Dome travels, we get to jump down into a pit that turns out to be the lair of another boss enemy, the Garden Keeper. The Garden Keeper somewhat resembles a giant mechanical scorpion, but instead of stinging, he will try to sweep us with its tail, hit you while plunging forward, or shoot laser beams out of its tail while hanging from the ceiling. But despite our efforts and overcoming the Garden Keeper challenge, we still can't get 8 out of her prison, and on top of that, her room is about to go into a lockdown. So to still aid us on our mission to defeat Eidos, she transfers the data to override the AI to Diana. So now with the key to stop Eidos once and for all, our next step is the mainframe that is located in the depths of the lunar mines. To access the mines we actually have to leave the research facilities and cross the moon's surface without actually touching the ground itself. Because if we do, we are going to be attacked by a gigantic sandworm-like mining robot called a lunar digger. But in the end, avoiding him didn't really make a difference, as right before entering the mainframe, we are forced to fight the lunar digger anyway. And with the lunar digger out of the way, we finally can get inside and face Eidos directly. Inside, we find some horrific scenes, with the ground and some deceased scientists being overgrown with dead filament. When Eidos realizes what we are about to do, he activates a final defense mechanism that increases the gravity so that we are pulled to the ground. But Diana manages to pull through and reboot and override Eidos. When the AI is back online, it tells us that the control went back to 8 and that the transportation of that filament is continued. In our confusion, 8 appears, levitating with a changed appearance and controlling orbs and threads of that filament. She reveals her plan to bring the deadly substance to Earth before shooting lances of the filament at us. One hits you, and while trying to deflect the next wave, Diana is severely damaged, and the two fall down with the collapsing structures beneath them. When the injured Yu comes back to his senses, he heads back to the shelter with Diana in his arms. The shelter's AI recognizes Diana's critical condition and reveals a secret tram system leading to the experimental pragmatics section of the facility. Here we need to find a generator unit that powers a machine that is capable of cleansing and repairing Diana's damages. During the process, we need to hold off an infected combat mech that Diana defeats with her new cleansing abilities as soon as the repairing process is finished. Afterwards, they agree that they have to stop A no matter what, and we get to see that Yu suffers from the dead filament infection after the attack. To put the plan into action, we have to find the evil Pragmata in the central port. On our way there, we are confronted by huge amounts of infected machines that can only be dealt with by utilizing Diana's new cleansing ability. Further, we learn through emails and recorded holo messages that Aid's hatred comes from her creator, Dr. Higgins' memories, who lost his daughter because the Delphi Corporation that owns the Moon Research Facility tested an unstable version of lunar filament on a sick daughter that immediately died. When we arrive at the overgrown hangar, Aid's preparations are almost complete, and as soon as she notices us, she attacks and lets the dark filament take over to transform her into a humanoid silver-purple mechanical beast with tentacles coming out of its back. During the fight, she shields herself with a layer of filament we have to cleanse, tries to hack Diana, which we have to counter, and tries to hit us with her tentacles. With her defeated, her plans to destroy Earth comes to an end. Before dissolving herself, Aid begs Diana to tell Dr. Higgins' story. While Diana seems a bit troubled, Yu shares no sympathy with her and tells Diana that they have to leave. They take the cargo lift to the top where the transportation shuttles are supposed to be. On their way up, the tower is attacked by the entire mass of dead filament that is now out of control, with Aid not being there anymore to guide it. Yu grabs an extension for his suit that makes him able to fly and adds a huge railgun to his arsenal. So now, while flying upwards, we have to constantly keep firing at the dead filament's weak points to keep it from destroying our only way home. In the end, we manage to kill off the monstrous mass by hitting its core, which causes it to dissolve. At the top, Yu realizes he doesn't have much time left due to the infection, puts Diana inside a cargo shuttle, uses his suit's energy source to power the shuttle, sends Diana off to Earth and stays behind, floating through space motionless. We get one final scene that shows Diana out of her pod, standing at a beach looking up to the moon, and the game story ends right here. Now, after completing the unknown signal mode, where you have to 100% complete each sector and fight stronger versions of every boss, there might be signs for a happy ending for Diana and Yu. For one, you can find the so-called black box mod that indicates the potential cure for the dead filament infection in its description text, and on the other hand, at the end of the second playthrough, you can hear Kevin say something along the line of, "Oh, you're back, and alone this time." So Yu might actually get fixed up and finds its way back to Earth too. Anyway, first of all, welcome back to anyone skipping the story section. While Pragmata is far from perfect, the unique gameplay, likable characters and beautiful versatile art direction made for a really enjoyable experience that captured me beyond an initial playthrough, and might even result in my first platinum in a while, depending on how hard lunatic difficulty might be. I hope, with a few tweaks and new features here and there, Capcom can build on this very strong foundation and turn Pragmata into a franchise. Now the only thing left would be your opinion, so if you have the time, feel free to share in the comments down below. If you liked what you saw, maybe consider liking and subscribing if you don't want to miss any future videos. And I hope to see you next time.